So Katie, why don't you go ahead and start us, and then I'll wait 15 seconds and I'll begin.
Sounds good.
Mr. Boldt, it's good to see you.
Hey, Tim, how are you doing?
Really good.
Kim, I don't know if we've met formally, but I've been at some meetings where you have spoken, so thanks for participating today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Hopefully we'll get a chance to shake hands in person
One
soon.
of these days, I've got both my shots, so
Me too, I'm ready.
Right. Tim, are you as well?
You got it. Got to lead
Okay.
by example and get
Right.
our team, as we deal with retail guests all day long, we don't want to spread anything to our community.
Yeah.
We want to get
I
everybody
think
on
all of
board.
our people want to get their shots so they can get rid of their masks. It's, you fog up with your glasses when you're working on a site, so it's not fun. Tim, I've enjoyed being on the Boldt's nature preserve with your dad. He's, as you know, quite the dynamo. So my dad experienced that firsthand. So I'm getting my share now.
He's certainly driven, and
Yep, it was fun.
he is very much like that group. So I'm glad that he gets that opportunity with all of you, and I'm glad I get an opportunity with all of you this morning.
Yeah.
Good morning, guys. So welcome to our next installment of the DIG series. This is a virtual CEO breakfast event hosted by the Pulse Young Professionals of the division of the Fox Cities Chamber of Commerce. Our DIG event series is here to develop, inspire, and grow each of you as professionals in our community. Today is no different. I hope that you'll find something to take away with you when you leave this webinar. Today, I'm pleased to be joined by three individuals who are exemplary of their topics in a variety of ways. Kim Underhill is the group president of Kimberly-Clark North America's personal care and consumer tissue business. She'll highlight the company's efforts to be more diverse and inclusive. Tim Bergstrom is the president and chief operating officer of the Bergstrom Automotive, and he'll talk about their leadership and their leading across multiple generations. And then Tom Boldt, chief executive officer of the Boldt Company, and discussing their corporate philanthropy. I'll introduce each of the people in a few moments, as they'll share a little bit about themselves and their company. I'll ask them a few questions to each of them before opening it up to the audience for asking questions. As you have questions, please use the Q&A section of the Zoom platform. You can also certainly use the chat section to talk amongst other audience members. If you have questions or want to have commentary there, please do keep it professional. But again, the Q&A section is the feature we'll be using to answer and reply to questions once we open up that Q&A. So feel free to post that and share questions there, and we'll answer them once that section opens, but you can start asking your questions now to fill that pipeline up. Following today's event, we'll send out a link with the recorded presentation in an email that you registered for this panel with. If you're a guest joining us today, please, I encourage you to sign up for your annual membership in Pulse to attend these events for free or at a reduced cost. Our next installment of the DIG series will be in person at the Grand Meridian on June 30th, featuring former CEO of the Oshkosh Corporation, Wilson Jones. Will be taking place at 11:30 a.m. on June 30th at the Grand Meridian. So mark your calendars for the event. And again, that will be our first in-person event if everything continues to progress the way they've been going. Also on May 25th, Pulse will be hosting an urban hike between Neenah and Menasha. So mark your calendars for that event with more details to come. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Kim Underhill. Kim, will you share a few details about yourself and the Kimberly-Clark initiatives that you're currently leading today?
Well, very good. Thank you, Scott, and good morning to everyone. I'm looking forward to lots of good dialogue here over the next bit of time. So as Scott said, a 33-year veteran of Kimberly-Clark. So I've been a long-term cashier. I started in 1988 as an engineer and had the opportunity to move around the world and work around the world, and then relocated back to Neenah, Wisconsin in 2018, which I was thrilled to sort of come full circle from where I started with the company. So lots of perspective. We have about 9,000 employees in North America, about 45,000 employees globally. So a big footprint. We started the company obviously in Neenah, Wisconsin with the Kimberlys and the Clarks. So there's a very deep history here. But as time has gone on, we have really grown into this wonderful multinational company that lives, we have opportunities for growth and employment all over the world. And I've had a chance to take advantage of that, which has just been awesome. But today I'd like to talk a little bit about our energy and efforts around inclusion and diversity. And clearly that is a very hot topic for all sorts of reasons, not only for businesses, but also in society. And so it's where I think life and work have sort of merged together with all things happening. And so maybe I'll share just a couple of moments about the journey that KC has been on, and then hope that will stimulate some questions as we get into the conversation here in a few moments after my two other esteemed panelists introduce themselves. So I came back to the North American business in Neenah, Wisconsin here in 2018, and got after right away this opportunity around inclusion and diversity as a real a foundation for our culture. And I'll reflect back to a March 2019 meeting where we actually spent half of the meeting on inclusion and diversity. And a lot of that was really sharing stories about what people had been experiencing. There was definitely this undercurrent that people didn't believe that it existed and we had issues in our culture. And I knew that simply was not true, because one-on-one, people would come and say, I have a challenge, or I have an issue, or I could use some advice on a certain situation. And that was really the beginning of opening up what I would say is one of the big learnings is you have to create the environment for the dialogue. You have to create the environment to make people be safe to say, look, I have experienced this, whatever the situation might be. And so that began our focused effort and really led to a couple of key areas. One was education. And sometimes there's a lot of unintended consequences of dialogues or comments or situations that people actually don't really realize. And I can think back over my career where I've had situations where in the moment I'm like, wow, I really didn't feel comfortable there. And after the fact, I'm like, I should have done something about it. I should have spoken up and said, hey, you guys are making me feel comfortable by this conversation here, whether it's an off-color joke, or I might have in some cases earlier in my career been the only female in the room, which was quite the situation for probably my first 20 years at Kimberly-Clark. So that was the first thing, is how do we really start to educate people and give folks the space to actually feel like they can speak up? The second thing that we've done here is to really start to focus on making sure that as we build our talent base, that it is fair and equitable from an interview process. So from the beginning of this year, all of our interviewing panels and interviewees for any new job is going to be a diverse slate of folks. And there's been a little bit of pushback on that because people are like, well, that's kind of unfair. And all I'm saying is we just want a diverse slate of candidates to have the opportunity to interview for jobs in our businesses. And so, and to make sure that we don't really come down that place of unconscious bias. The other thing we've done is we have 2 panelists on every interview process now to make sure that people will see an interview candidate from very different perspectives. And so this is not always about the bad side of inclusion and diversity. This is about making sure that we build a talent base that is inclusive of everybody. And our mission is such that everybody can come to work to be their authentic self and do their best work every single day. And so we believe this next step in the talent process is going to help us do that. Once again, not the only thing. The third thing I would quickly share, and then we'll get on with the discussion, is really attaching our brands to the things that matter. And so you may have noticed over the course of times on some of our brands like Cottonelle, where we recently attached ourselves to the Black Health Initiative for African-American folks that actually are testing in colorectal cancer, which is a high percentage rate. And how can our brands really connect with actual issues that are centered around areas that affect different diverse parts of the population? And so hopefully you see a lot of different places where KC is starting to really plug in. And I would just say it's not an HR initiative. It's a leadership initiative that's embraced from the very top down. And I hope we can talk about that just a little bit more here in a few moments. So with that, I will flip it back over to you, Scott.
Hey, thank you so much, Kim.
You really had to start with the pro, didn't you? Thanks a lot, Scott.
Well, that's why I have you
Kim.
following. That's why I have you following Kim's lead today. So, Tim, I've been able to see you speak multiple times about company culture.
That's because I work cheap.
I hope that you could share a few thoughts with us today about your leadership team and how did the Bergstrom leadership team get built and where your role is today.
Okay, thank you for that, everyone. It's foreign just to see my friends on the screen and not all of you, but I'm glad you're out there. I trust you're out there, and I trust you'll ask some questions that will keep us on topic for what you want to hear. But Tim Bergstrom My father and my uncle started a company before I was born, and it was a bar in downtown Neenah. It was called the Old Post Office. I can still see it out the window of my office. It's no longer a bar, it's a basement now. And they sold booze, alcohol, in a basement for the same price as everybody else and the same product as everybody else, and had to make sure that people wanted to come buy from them. And they did it with two things. They were going to know every patron's name and their drink. And what they wanted to do is make sure that everybody got personalized service where they counted, where they felt like they belonged, and they made it about the guest. And that took them on a journey to start a disco. I was fortunate enough never to have seen the disco. I've seen lots of pictures, lots of suits, lots of friends of both of them that still wear or that still have those laser shoot pictures and the hairdos. A lot of fun. Then they went into hotels, and Dad sold cars on the side to make the payroll work. And then ultimately had the opportunity to start our auto industry in 1982. So I was born in 76, so I was 6. And I watched him lead his team and dive all in at taking care of the guests, but by doing it by taking care of his team. And he worked alongside them, and they built this bond where together they worked as one team and truly focused. Kim, you had a dog walk through. You got to tell us, who's your dog?
Cooper, and that one just went by as Chase. Got 2 of them.
At some point, we got to meet them both. You got to bring them into this. I have a Cooper too. So, but along those lines, he started a Chevy store with 22 teammates. 3 of them still work with us. And the only reason why 3 is many of them have retired or in that age where since 82, they've worked hard enough to do it. Since then, we added 3 hotels, a resort, and a whole bunch of dealerships. And I grew up in the business, and what ended up happening was to capital needs as well as our strengths, we diversified and leaned into automotive. And kind of our premise now is the same premise from the start: take care of guests, do what's right, treat them like family. And how you do that is make sure each one of them feels like an individual, gets a personalized experience. And we've now grown to represent every brand sold in North America that isn't a niche brand. So there's no Ferrari or Lamborghini. And the goal is, if you think automotive and you live in Wisconsin, primarily northeastern Wisconsin, you think about us. We have a very different model than Kim and KC, where it's not worldwide. For us, we're a very hands-on operation. We're not a manufacturer. We're not pure internet based. There's a lot of guest contact in a retail setting. And so having our teams be able to build the bonds with each other to deal with the hassles that come up from our guests, and grow within our company, it's been better for us to stay localized. And so we're in 3 primary markets now, in the Fox Valley, in Green Bay, and Madison. But with the internet, we do sell in all 50 states. We've sold cars, we've delivered in all 50 states. We don't have licenses to sell outside the US, and we've never built a car. We're not a manufacturer. So with that, we're all guest service. And when I was prepping and you gave me this lead question of we have 1,750 teammates now. And I'm incredibly proud of that and growing. That's a new milestone for us. And during COVID, we actually were able to grow. Not that business grew, but the opportunity where others needed to sell. And in our world, you can acquire franchises. You can't necessarily just pop one in because of franchise rule. It gave us the right opportunity to do that. But the question was, we were hoping you would be able to address the issue of leading multiple generations. And I think my main point was, it's not an issue. What it truly is, if you take a different lens and look at it, what it is an opportunity. I think Kim did a great job of explaining in the world of D&I, there's a lot that gets brought to the table. And I look at just like my family, if you just take, I have three kids and my wife, we all bring something different to the table. I have a son who gives us the opportunity to go watch soccer, and I stay current with sports by talking to him. I have a daughter who's an artist who's now looking at colleges. So she's giving me the experience of what she sees through her eyes in college. And then I have a youngest one I call the boss. She's in charge, and she's just got a personality, but she reminds us not to take life too seriously. You know, I'll ask her for a hug or a kiss at night, and she'll give me some sort of joke. We all bring something to our family. And my wife is the one that, you know, she went to school to be a financial advisor. So you got a car salesman. With salespeople, we have that personality where you spend money to make money, and you just keep going. And at the end of the day, hopefully you sold enough to fill the till to make it all work. She's the one that says, wait a minute, Tim, we still have a mortgage to pay. So again, so I really look at the multi-generational piece as something we can dive deeper into, which will be fun with your questions, but it's truly an opportunity to connect for our world with our guests and also bring out the talents of the individual teammates. I got a text late last night from one of our new sales managers. She actually came over from Starbucks and is loving being in our industry. And she said, I want to be on a panel, or I want to coach, or I want to do this. And she had 3 topics. And they're 3 topics that were important to her that I had never even thought of. But as I read her text multiple times, I thought, this could be good for our team. This could be good for our company. Mm-hmm. So then that functions into my role. And I think my role truly is not being all knowing. You know, every single day we have 20,000 interactions. I can't answer every one of those questions or be on the front lines or be in everybody's shoes. But I can facilitate, as Kim talked earlier, allowing others to have the discussion on D&I. I can facilitate making sure we're listening to each other and it's open, and we're allowed to have those discussions on how we grow. And so that would be my 2 cents today is there's a way to lean into every one of these things out there. And if you look at it as a challenge, that might be motivating to you in first step. But if you look at it as an opportunity to grow and be stronger and be better, you know, our company, if we were still a bar in the basement of a post office, and we'd be employing 4 or 5 people. And now we're able, you know, our average healthcare needs is 4 dependents per teammate or employee. So when you take that times 1750, you can make an impact. It feels pretty amazing. So Scott, I'm going to throw it back to you. I learned that from Kim to give it back to the moderator.
Well, thank you so much, Tim. And I look forward to hearing some more of your insight here today and some of the questions. I see we've got the chats being used. So thank you for those who are already using the chat. So good dialogue there. Also some questions that are filling up in the Q&A. So thank you for that. So finally, Tom Boldt of the Boldt Company. You can find Boldt's name among Kimberly-Clark, amongst Bergstrom's, on many of the staples in our community. And a few of my favorites are the Performing Arts Center, the Fox City Stadium, and the Appleton Family Ice Center, where I spend a lot of my time. So Tom, philanthropy has been very big in the community at Boldt. I just want to know, talk a little bit more about the Boldt Company, your footprint, and then as well as how do you guys introduce philanthropy amongst your employees at the company?
Great. All right. Well, thank you, Scott, and thank you for this opportunity to be with everyone today. And it's great to have Kim and Tim here as cohorts on this panel today. So a little bit of a background on Boldt. This year we're 132 years young. The company was founded by my great-grandfather as a small carpentry shop. He came off the farm in Brillion and decided that he wanted to take the skills that his father, who was an immigrant from Germany, had taught him on the farm and bring that to a growing Appleton community. Fast forward to today, we are a construction services company and a real estate developer we have 14 offices. We work throughout the country, and we have had some international experience. Last week, we had over 2,500 employees on our payroll, of which 550 more or less were salaried individuals, and then about 2,000 union trades people. Our major markets are institutional work, such as healthcare and higher ed, commercial, which would be office buildings or general types of buildings, industrial facilities in the pulp and paper industry, automotive, food processing. And one of the things that's been really interesting about the development of our company, I'm currently the fourth generation to lead this company. I've got a son who's working for us out in Washington, D.C., fifth generation. Don't know whether he will come back to the company or not, but it's nice to see that we've had multiple generations that have been involved in the growth of our company. And one of the things that I think about in this idea of opportunities and using assets, in the early days, tools were very expensive. And so if you couldn't afford them, oftentimes you made them. And with the carpentry skills that my great-grandfather had, there are still some handmade tools that we have in our archives that he made to solve particular problems. And in our very competitive world right now, being innovative and nimble is something that is really important, not only for us, but any business. Innovation is important. So some of the big themes that are happening in our market and markets right now are certainly an interest in sustainability and more efficiency as it relates to the use of materials and reducing costs of production of the facilities that we build, so that the companies, our customers, are able to realize their particular business plans in an efficient way. We've adapted Japanese management tools, often called lean production, which have reduced a lot of the waste in our systems. Many people thought that that philosophy could not be applied to construction because of variability, and we're proving that wrong. And there's a new, maybe buzzword, but we're also pioneering work in the modular end of it because of the reduction in the number of skilled tradespeople who have the ability and the skills to do this work. So having more manufactured type projects and components that could be delivered to projects to improve schedule, maintain quality and pricing is really something important. So lots of excitement, and because we're in so many different states and so many different markets, it's really fun to see the different opportunities that we have. And one of the things that we might feel in our own little bubble as far as, oh, woe is me, the economy is really struggling or whatever, we're seeing a completely different picture. The momentum or companies wanting to grow and the ability to grow is something that we're seeing across the board. There's a lot of interest and activity. So we've been very, very busy during COVID. And as we get out of COVID, I think there's going to be a real demand by consumers and companies to meet those demands. So we're very optimistic about the future in all of our markets. Scott, you asked the question about philanthropy and sort of the tradition of the company. And I guess I could say is that this has been modeled by many generations. I've been going through some of the archives and some of the history of our company, and knowing that my great-grandfather was involved in community activities and different fundraising things. So you're indoctrinated it almost because of your family and what they've been involved in. I just mentioned a couple of things that I would say would be influences on my own life. Certainly my grandparents and my parents and other family members. My church would be another thing. And I would also show Rotary International. There's multi-generations that have been involved in Rotary, which was the first service club. A motto is service above self. And I think that idea of service in a community, whether it's providing your time, your talent, or your treasure, are the things that have really permeated my life and have been something that's been modeled for other family members, but also people on our team. So,
can you sing the Rotary song for us?
I can.
Rotary, oh Rotary.
We've got lots of different songs, Tim. So
Nina Rotary's got me trained.
okay.
You weren't kidding about singing today, were you, Tim?
It's not good singing, but it's entertaining.
It's good for your brain, I'm told. So.
Well, it's all good to share a laugh and smile, right? It's very contagious. It can help us be more positive. So thank you so much, Tom, Kim, Tim, for sharing a little bit about the company, a little bit about yourselves. And certainly in the Q&A, there's already some questions in there that I'm going to get back to, but a couple of them I think tie together some things that you guys already have touched on. So we'll certainly get to those Q&A questions. There's already 4 in there. So but it's really quick to stay on topic with some of the things we want to discuss. Then we'll kind of open up to the floor because it'll be a lot more open to anybody. But going back to you, Kim, you know, one of the big things, and you guys have the ability to travel quite a bit and see things throughout the country. And so with the diversity and inclusion, the progress that we're trying to make right now and the current trends and things happening in our current, you know, mainstream media and everything, you know, is it something that you're noticing change already occurring, or is it something that's still taking place that might be years down the road before we actually see what ground we're making up?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say there is no question that we're seeing change, but to be honest with you, it's slow, right? And I do think when it comes to inclusion and diversity, it's one experience at a time. And we really focus on if every new experience individually in whatever the environment might be, that person is going to feel better about the ideas as well as feel the comfortable and courage to speak up. And so I think it's a journey. I think we have a very long way to go. I think what has happened in our society in the last 12 months has certainly accelerated the conversation and certainly made it a much more front of the table discussion topic about, you know, why is this happening and how can companies like ourselves not only educate our employees, but as I mentioned, we live and work in this wonderful community. And so it's, you know, inclusion and diversity is not just about inside the 4 walls of our companies. It's about how people interact and feel as you are integrating into society. So I don't know how long it's going to take. I think it might be one of those journeys where you never ever get to the final goalpost, because as soon as you do, you sort of raise the bar. I think what we have to do is we have to remain committed that it is one interaction at a time. And as we get more and more focused on speaking up and addressing the issues, the better this is all going to work out for both companies and our community.
Thank you, Kim. Tim, one of the questions that came to us from the panel here involved George Hormel and his son Jay working on the meat processing plant at SPAM in Austin, Minnesota, before he took over the business. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Hormel story there.
I'm not.
I'm unfamiliar, but I do know you spent some time in different departments before you were able to join a leadership team at Bergstrom. Do you want to share a little bit about that preparation for you taking over the family company or being part of the leadership team, and I guess really going to department, division as you join the team at Bergstrom?
Wow. All right. Well, thank you for that. And Tom, I think you have some experience here probably to share. And Kim, I think with all the roles you held, you have some experience there that you could offer up. I would say this, again, I already talked about framing or the lens you look through. And I had to have somebody asked a question I saw in the comments that you'll probably get to later, one of the things you could do differently. So much is how you look at things. I mean, we truly, in every discussion we have, it's how you look at things. And, growing up in a community where your dad is trying to make a difference or out there a lot, and every billboard seems to have your name on it. And you get comments that say, things like, oh, you're Tim Bergstrom, I thought you'd be, and then you don't know. So you start putting pressure on yourself. For me, when I would go to the dealership, I was able to take that pressure off myself because they were my family. My dad had treated the team as family. And it was a wonderful learning experience and a mentorship and a blessing. Shame on me. I can remember sneaking out back with the salespeople and having a couple of cigarettes during the smoke break with them, or, lunchtime, the technicians would all play. And the world changes. It's always going to be changing, but we had a smoke break in the morning and a smoke break in the afternoon. And I would love to hang out with the technicians, and, those that didn't smoke would sit in a little group and huddle and talk about things, and they'd teach me how engines worked. And, I felt the pressure to do a good job, but I also had kind of a firsthand experience on seeing it through the eyes of others. And I'll never forget. So I had two jobs that I often refer to. One is my father would have me come clean the shop after school. It was a job I could handle and not really screw up. So it was an easy one to give your 12-year-old son to do. And I took a lot of pride in it. And I would show up, and we still put them in cars today, but back then you had oil change stickers where you would peel them apart. You'd separate a piece of paper from the sticky part. You would write on the miles when you need your next oil change. You put the reminder and the advertisement up in the window. So whenever the technicians did an oil change, you would pull out that sticker and the white piece of paper. You'd have two pieces of garbage. And I would come in at night, and guess what I hated cleaning off the floor was all of those squares. And it was a reminder to me back then, if we all just cared. I was so offended by the technicians who liked me, but didn't realize the impact of if they would just put it in their pocket and throw it out, rather than make me come clean it up. And it was a burden on the company. When Tom talks about lean, I think there's so many different ways it's in there. But before I could hose the floor down and squeegee it, I had to pick up all these stickers that were, because if you got them wet, the paper would start to disseminate and cause a bigger mess for you. And so today I still reference things like that with our team on making the place look good. And it's all of our responsibility to keep it clean. And then you get to tell stories when you've been in that seat. And I connected to if you go to the hospital and you walk into the doctor's office and it's dirty on the floor and the doctor doesn't look professional or has holes in there, you worry about the kind of care that you're giving. And, our technicians that are in training that are earning $13, $14 an hour that are just starting with us, if they don't put a wheel on tight, it comes off on the highway. And when it comes off on the highway, they have a family in the car. There's a lot of responsibility with it. And so it comes back to these little things. And so being able to tell the story where I was in those seats. So yes, I've done every job. I'm not going to tell you I did them all well. Parts was terrible for me. Back then we had these things called microfiche, and you'd try and you'd pull out the deck, you'd put it in, and you'd try and find the right thing, and it had a 3D image. And it was always close enough for me, and it never fit in the engine. So the techs would never come to me for it. So that job didn't stay long. And as you can already tell, I do have the gift of being able to talk. It's the first time I think I truly ever got fired from a job was when they put me in the accounting office. I can do numbers, I'm good at math, but nobody else could get anything else done because I couldn't sit in that chair. And so the office manager who had worked with Dad for at least 10 years had come up and said, if this boy doesn't get out of here, we aren't going to get anything done. And so sales was a good spot for me. So I have some good stories and references, and it gives me commonality with our team to talk about. And I don't think it was any tougher than it is today. I think it's actually tougher today in a lot of ways. Where you have cell phones and other distractions and things going on. And the second job I didn't talk about that I thought was a fun one is, again, when I'm dating myself now. I'm only 44, but I feel older. And I'm in that stretch where I'm changing. I'd always been the young one at the dealership. And now I'm starting to tell stories where I have to catch myself, where people don't know who Archie Bunker is, or people don't know who the Waltons are. And I can't use those stories. But when I was a kid, any story you told, there was a pretty good chance somebody had heard of it. So now I have to have them teach me more. I remember so much teaching my dad, this is what's happening in this generation. It's a reminder to me to listen. But the job I had was on Fridays, I'd get done with school. I had a little red BMX bike with a yellow seats and pads. And I'd pedal as fast as I could to the dealership because the technicians would hold me accountable. If I wasn't there between 3:30 and 4 o'clock, they were frustrated because we had a quarter barrel, a keg in the body shop. And I would tap the keg and I would bring a beer to everybody. And they'd all get one beer to finish their shift. Obviously, we don't do that today, but it also gave me an opportunity there was accountability in that. We had good conversations with it. I learned how to pour a good beer. And now I'm amazed, in other parts of the world, they still do some of that, but our world has changed here. Took you on a journey there. I'm not sure that that's what you asked for, but I can tell you that every one of our teammates, when you think about all the teammates that have worked with us for the years, all of them have helped build this brand. And it's not about Dad, and it's not about our leadership team. When people say I had an amazing interaction with Bergstrom, it's always about that frontline teammate, and they never use their name. And so I cherish that. They use the name of, go to Bergstrom, they take good care of me. And I feel that responsibility. So there you go. Back at you, Scott. Or Kim, add to that and get the lens off me, or Tom, share your.
Maybe I'll throw in a couple of comments there, because I think you shared some very important nuggets. And, I would just start by saying, as you think about your career, my advice I give to folks is look for the experiences and the skills, not the titles, because when you get to these big jobs, they are hard. And most of the time you're faced with the decisions, in a lot of cases, are 51-49. It's a tie, and you have to really use judgment. And I think over the course of my career, when you see folks that haven't actually had a chance to really develop, by the time they get into those big jobs, it's usually a pretty short tenure. Versus if you've been patient with yourself to give yourself those experiences, Tim's talking about walking in the shop floor and understanding how operations happens on the ground, whatever industry you might be in, is something that I have definitely seen over my career, and something to think about when you're planning your career. I always tell people, don't go for the job title and the job level. Go for, I'm going to go do this because I'm going to create some skills and experiences that are going to help differentiate me and prepare me better for the multitude of things that you have to do and deal with as you sort of rise up in a company.
No, I think you nailed that on the head, Kim. And Tim, I was just going to say that the conversations that people have and where we're at today, and making sure that everybody's held accountable. I got to spend some time with Tom as well. And, seeing Tom, I've seen when I worked at the Boys and Girls Club, the CEO there, picking up the litter in the yard, putting things in the garbage, just nobody's too big to go and just keep things clean, looking good. And it's a representation that I guess to stem down on across the whole company culture. So I think you guys all do a fantastic job of being exemplary, of being leaders and leading from the top. Tom,
can I cut you off there, Scott, for just a second?
Yeah.
If I could play off what Kim just said, one of the questions I get often, people that are in, for example, like this Pulse group, they're trying to grow, they want to be successful, they want to move up. And often I get, what do I have to do to get to this job? Or what do I have to do? And their focus is there. And when I just, what Kim said resonated with me. My answer is get really good at what you're doing, because that'll serve you later. And when we promote people or help them rise up, it's because of what others are seeing around them, out of them, or from them. And it's not because of their desire to have that job. It's because of their desire to make other people better around them, their department work, to have their team functioning well. And, I would firmly believe that if Aaron Rodgers wanted to be Matt LaFleur someday, the best thing he can do right now is be the best quarterback he can be and pay attention to playing that job well and grow himself. And so he can use those experiences when he gets Matt's job, if he gets Matt's job. But if he's terrible at it, he gets thrown out of the league and there's no opportunity for it. So truly staying present with the job you're in, doing it well, and then growing yourself. Again, in today's world, I'm just amazed at the access to podcasts and YouTube and mentors. And when I was in Neenah Rotary, I was trying to find mentors that would spend time and give me nuggets. Today, you don't have to do that. They're out there. And just because it's not necessarily personalized to you, you can learn from it.
Thank you, Tim. Last question I have that I'll open up to the Q&A because there's some really good questions in there is, Tom, when Boldt gets involved in a project, be it a nonprofit initiative or something in the community local here or another building project, how do you get you mentioned 2,500 people all together between the trades as well as its salaried staff. How do you get them behind it in support of if it's a project that's really going to be more of a cause-worthy thing than it's going to be for the profit margin? How do you get people behind that, rallied about it, and excited about that?
Well, first of all, again, we'll just describe sort of a great cause as an example. And so many times people are unfamiliar with what the mission of the nonprofit is. And I think that once that story is told, that resonates with most people. I mean, we're feeling individuals, we have family members that might be affected by these nonprofits. So I don't think that it's that difficult. And when I was reflecting a little bit about this panel today, one of the things that I thought of is experiences with United Way. And oftentimes they're talking about United Way, and I've traveled and have lots of friends overseas, and they would question, well, gee, doesn't the government take care of this type of a problem? And in our history, that's not been something that has happened. And there's something called the de Tocqueville Society for the United Way, which is encouraging larger gifts. But when de Tocqueville came to the United States, he was a French philosopher, sociologist. He found something very different than what he saw in Europe. And that was that when there were problems in communities, people in the United States would get together and rally around these things to jointly solve them. So we have nonprofit organizations now that advocate for various causes and various needs within their communities. And these will rise or fall by the ability of the organization to tell a compelling story. And when we're involved with many of these types of projects, you're talking about either life and death. It might be a healthcare type of situation. During the pandemic, one of the issues that's really been raised up is mental health. That's a issue that has not been really something at the forefront, and people don't care to talk about these types of issues, but it has impacted people, and being involved in organizations that are working with people with mental health issues so that they can do their very best is really important. So, everybody is different. I mean, certainly there are people that are overly interested, want to contribute financially, want to volunteer, want to be involved and share their talents to make these projects successful. But I think in the literal building of a community where you have structures that will serve the needs of people, that's a very compelling story. And I think a lot of people in our industry are attracted to that because at the end of the day, they can see the results of their work and feel like they are creating something of value, not only for their own immediate families, but other families in the community. And so, you're building community by being involved with these organizations that are going to help people and hopefully solve problems and create a better tomorrow.
Thank you, Tom. And I'm going to keep it with you, Tom. Tim shed some light on this already. I think Kim has as well. In the question, there's already some questions about the traits of the future leaders for the next generation, how you get to continue to grow on your path towards leadership. Civic organizations have come up in all your guys' conversations so far. So kind of paraphrasing those questions, the traits of future leaders are going to help shape the Fox Cities the next 10 to 20 years, and advice for young professionals and their journey towards leadership. Tom, I'll go first, and then Tim, Kim, please feel free to jump in after Tom responds. What advice do you have? What are the things that you're looking for people just to be good people and help our community continue to grow going forward?
Yeah, I think one of the perceptions that many of us have is that and maybe this is because of COVID, we're separated, and we're a social species. I think the interaction that we have, and as I mentioned earlier, this idea of people coming together as groups, as individuals from very different backgrounds for a common goal and purpose, is a very motivating and satisfying experience. It can be frustrating, it can be unnerving. You don't necessarily will be successful, but I think so many times on these things, it's more about the journey that you're taking and the experiences that you have. And we've got these examples. The video that's going to be created today, it will never change. We're never going to be able to come back and say, oh, wait a minute, I didn't quite mean that. So maybe what we're telling people today, tomorrow I'd say something different, or Kim would say something different, or Tim would say something different. And that's what building a relationship does, is that it isn't, Tom Boldt is interested in construction or whatever. Well, I'm interested in lots of things, but if you don't have a relationship with me, it's sort of a one dimension. And I think we're complex individuals, and I think we're trying to put people in boxes, and I don't think that that's really fair, and I don't think that that's something that's really healthy as we go forward. So I think it's this idea, let's build relationships and understanding. It's helpful as it relates to diversity and inclusion, because if we say, well, everybody is like such and such, every woman engineer is like this, that's an affront to every woman engineer, or whatever you would want to, every car dealer is like this. Well, no, that's not quite true. I think that there's a lot more dimension to these things, a lot more complexity, and if we understand that and be open-minded, I think we're going to be able to really move forward, rather than assuming that this is the way that things are, this is the way people are going to behave. Your decision making is often informed by multiple opinions, and let's make sure that those opinions are heard. So I think the idea is let's be more open. Let's have relationships that are not superficial, and appreciate the complexity of people.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I'll add to that, Tom. I think you hit some great ones. I had a chance to think about it and make a note here, so I get a little time. But I think there's three things that for me really came out as a result of managing and leading a business through COVID. And I think those things were always there, but they've become more important, and I think will be sort of the next generation. The first is what Tom talked about, was listening and engaging with your teams. And it's been hard on Zoom, right? It's been hard to have those personal relationships, because we're all so used to having the drive-bys in the office, or out visiting with our customers, or out in a site or a location. So I think you got to figure out different ways, and it's got to be authentic and genuine. It can't just be a superficial, hey, how are you doing? And then dismissive in that way. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would say is being humble that you don't have all the answers. Like, it's hard when you're a leader and you have to say to the organization, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but I am going to figure it out, and I'm committed to that. And that's not always been a trait of a leader, to say, gosh, I actually don't know the answer here, and we're going to have to go do some work on it, and then figure out what's the best thing to do for our people and our business. And so thinking about being humble and recognizing that we are all human as well. The third thing I would say is, which Tom mentioned too, was, that point as a leader, you have to make decisions, even if you don't have all the answers. To be indecisive at a leadership level just completely puts the rest of the organization in a state of gridlock. And so getting comfortable with the fact that you may not have all the answers and you may not know if it's going to work or not, but having the judgment and the sort of the EQ awareness that you've got to get on with making decisions in order to move your team and your business forward in whatever environment would be. And I would say for me personally, all three of these have been really tested through the last, well, I guess we're heading into 14 months now from the day that we shut the offices. But I look at that as a gift. I look at that as a gift of experience that I certainly would have expected in my career. And so I think a lot about those three components as we go forward.
Fantastic. I could listen to both of you on this, and I think I could listen to all 62 participants go through the different impacts and the thing they miss and the impacts of their family. And, you know, this whole pandemic thing is a growth moment that we're going to reflect on for years. And I often reflect on the recession in 08 because of the dramatic impact that it had on our business and our community, but it's nothing compared to what we're going through now and the changes. And there's something, Kim, I liked all three of those in that moment of listening. It's unfortunate being in this where we're supposed to talk right now, and I'd almost rather be just listening to our participants and all of you and continuing to learn. Last week we did what we call as our race shop clean tour. It's in the world of automotive, there's these race shops that where they have cars where you're out on the racetrack and they were always dirty, and a guy named Roger Penske started winning everything. And when he started doing that, he had his race shops clean and you could eat off the floors. And it was just this precision mentality that carried across to everything. And so it was the first time where now Dad and I are vaccinated, and he and myself and John Hogarty, one of our executives, went to every single dealership and all 43 different rooftops to see the team and say hi and just listen. And yes, we had to provide answers, but the majority of it was just listening to our team. We learned so much, but the reason why we do it is it's a little bit like having a party at your house for the first time after winter or after you haven't cleaned it in a while and your kids and you have destroyed it. Now you think, oh my goodness, what are people going to think when they walk in? So winter and COVID was very tough on our retail facilities, and walking through, everybody got their places looking clean and amazing. But the bigger thing was we got to listen to our team, and all the little decisions we made where we had to listen to our team. We didn't have answers, but we made decisions because they needed to be made. The thank yous and the impactful moments and the things on how that played out. And time again, we did a lot of videos where Dad was just openly talking to our team, or I was, and just sharing what we were going through and why we were making the decisions and being very transparent. It was amazing how many of them fed back how important that was. And now that we're going through it, but in real time, we didn't really hear it. And so I would tell you that that moment of listening to your team, it was a growth moment for me as a reminder you were making the right decisions, and keep leaning into that even more in the future. And we have already produced a couple more videos since then, and just answering questions that came up. We used to get together and celebrate, bring all of our teams and their families to the Brewer game. And when are we going to do that again? And when are you going to force us to get vaccinated? And if we don't get vaccinated, can we go visit a manufacturer? And all these questions are on their mind. And it gave us an opportunity to reconnect, re-listen. At some point, I'll take you on a journey on our 5 T's because I think it plays to all of this, but I think I've talked enough there. I'll apply it to one of our questions because we use it with everything we do. It's a little bit like Kim's 3 takeaways.
Well, I think in response to one of the questions that I'm hearing from all 3 of you about communicating with employees and responding is so much as just listening and building relationships with people really seems to be the best way to help motivate employees and get everybody moving in the same direction, whether it's a project, a task, or just to help achieve the ultimate goal. I think it's fair to say that kind of is summarized there. One of the things that looks like is a challenge for a lot of people is, what's that one thing that is like most difficult for you to handle, manage, and how do you overcome that difficulty? So whether you're a leader in a leadership role, whether it's on a board in your current role in your organization, what's the big challenge that you face and how do you tackle that, whether it's ongoing or it's something small? But that was something that somebody asked recently. The most difficult aspect of being a leader or perhaps your role, and how do you handle that difficulty? And I'll go with Kim first.
All right. So I might take a slightly different angle on this one. I would say, the age-old concept of put your own oxygen mask on first before you go everybody else. For me, the most challenging part of being a leader is you're always giving, right? You're always on, you're always connected. And when I was running some global businesses, it was 24/7. I had a team in Asia, I had a team in North America. And so it was hard to turn off. And, my husband was quite grounding at one point to say, no more cell phones after 6 o'clock. Like we have to have a life. And so there's something to be said about taking care of yourself first so that you can take care of others. And it took me a while to figure that out because you feel like you're in the constant need to respond and engage. But I think as time has gone on, I've learned very much about reading my own body and when I get tired and making sure I'm getting enough exercise and enough sleep. And actually it's okay to turn the phone off, and it's okay not to work a weekend, and it's okay to take a vacation day and not respond. But I didn't always feel that way. I think when you're early in your career, you feel this need to constantly be available. And I would just say to all of you, when you're available, make it worthwhile, and then turn it off and regroup and refresh yourself, because the next day, the next week, the next quarter, you're going to be so much more valuable. But you will run out of energy because we are all human beings and there is limitations to all of that. And it took me 20 years to figure that out, to be honest with you.
Wow. Following that, thanks, Kim. Could not agree more. And you're right. We're into this. We got to prove ourselves, and we got people counting on us. And how do you turn it off? And how do you, sometimes you just need to vent. Who do you vent to when you're at the top? You can't go to a subordinate and say, so-and-so really, frustrated me today, or you can't, and your spouse doesn't deserve that. I would take it one step further and say it's the same challenge all of us have relative to time. Time for your personal, time for your team, time for your partners as far as manufacturers or whatever. It seems like trying to prioritize that time. I've been on a few of these panels, and it always comes up. How do you manage your time? How do you, and do you have enough time? I've yet to meet a person. I always get a few people in our training sessions that'll raise their hand, but that have too much time in a day that they're bored. Everybody could use more time in their day. And I truly believe it gets worse as you go up the ladder of responsibility, because you put it on yourself, where you feel you're neglecting your team. When our team works 6 days a week and in retail hours, and when you're not at work and they are, it's on your mind, and you feel like you might be letting them down. And then you want to acknowledge every single experience when somebody on your team loses a family member, or gets married, or has a baby, and at the same time has a bad experience at work or got hurt at work, and you want to be there for them, and trying to figure out all of those things and prioritize it. And I would finish with the best way I've been able to figure it out is whatever I do choose to do it right. Just prioritize to be present. Because when I do take time for my team, and then all of a sudden I pick up my phone to respond to, something, all of a sudden I said to them, they don't count. And with my team, when they do the same thing to me, and again, whether it's a phone, whether it's they're 5 minutes late rather than 5 minutes early, or you name it, you can come up with plenty of examples. We're no different than the rest of you. All of us need to be present when whatever you've chosen to do for that day, do it at that moment in time beyond that. And I can't tell you how many times I've thought of reaching over to grab my phone or check my emails while we're on this today. And that would be an atrocity. But it's that way for all of us.
Mhm. Oh, maybe can I just jump in one more comment and then flip it to you, Tom, because I'm sure you've got some great perspectives as well too. I would also say to all of you, as you rise in your career, don't underestimate the impact that your behaviors have on others. And so as you are a role model, if you're firing off emails on the weekend, then your team's going to be expecting that you are setting an unwritten sort of rule that you're expecting them to respond. I used to work for a gentleman many years ago, and this was before we had all this wonderful equipment at home to be able to basically be on 24/7 if you want. Famous for firing off emails on Sunday night. So you come into the office on Monday morning and it would just be this just list of stuff. And you would start your week angry, like honestly. And he did it every week until finally I just went in his office. I'm like, you have to stop. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, do you realize the impact you're having on this team? They're mad at you on Monday morning. And that's not the experience that you want to create. And he had no idea that he was having that impact. For him, it was just the efficiencies. And so I'm like, hey, I got a tip for you. Answer all your emails and put them in the draft folder. And then on Monday morning, Monday afternoon, send them, but you don't need to send them all on Sunday night. And so as all of you think about, as you rise up through your organizations and your roles, like you are setting an expectation by your own behaviors. And that's really important. And also took me a while to figure out that impact that you're having on others by the way that you actually work. Okay, Tom, we want to hear something fab from you.
Something new, some new nugget. So I'm not sure I'm going to be adding much, but I think this idea of prioritizing is really important. What are the most important things? One of the comments I remember one of our executives had is that there's certain fires that are more important than others. Some of them you can just let burn, but there's others that you really need to address. So I think prioritizing is important. And in our business, it's really important to continue that relationship with the client. But then you've got your whole team that's putting their heart and soul into a project, and you have the whole aspect of safety and wanting to make sure that everybody is going to be safe, whether it's our own employees or the others that are on that site. So this idea of the tone at the top is really important, and this idea of what are the things that you can articulate that are those important issues, and then delegating as well. I think one of the things that often happens is that people internalize so many of these things, and I'm fortunate to have a great team. I've got an HR department that I can go to and ask them questions about, or I can go to our production people and ask them about various things. These are, or if I have some ideas, I can say, what are we doing as it relates to this? And then I get their perspective, because I may have some ideas that I want to really promote, but if that's not something that's part of their particular goal for that day or that week or that month or that year, I'm okay with that, because it's what they really wish to do, because the idea is to move the ball forward. It's not to have a zillion ideas out there and a zillion, just keep people churning and churning and churning, because you dreamed up something at 3 o'clock in the morning and you think this is the most important thing. And the problem is, and Kim, you've talked about that. If we're modeling this behavior that at 2 o'clock in the morning, you got to be problem solving, that's really not going to give you the best answers. So these are marathons. These are not 100-yard dashes. And so if you're in it for the long haul, take a broad view of the issues, identify what's important, work toward that individually and collectively, and I think you'll get a lot more progress. I think something else, just from a standpoint, is that the work that you do at sometimes may be really mundane or kind of boring or whatever it is, but I think I've heard through the speakers and some of the questions here as well, is that, everything isn't a party, and somebody's going to have to do something. And I love your comment, Tim. You're going to do it well, because that requires discipline. It requires learning. It requires interaction usually with something, and along the way, you're going to develop some good habits as far as accomplishments. There's one, you have in business, I think in life too, you want to have some things you can say, I did this, I accomplished this. This is something that I can look back on and wow, that was a grand journey, but we achieved the goal. And in the philanthropy world, people often say that raising money is the hardest thing to do. And in many cases it can be, but I always look at that, and my dad was always, and I think all of us that have been involved in these types of things, what you want to do is make sure that you have an opportunity to articulate what the organization is doing and the importance it is for the community. If somebody does absolutely nothing with that other than register, aha, here's an organization that's doing good work in the community, you've achieved a goal. It's not the ultimate goal, but it's a goal. And who knows, that individual may at some point in time write a check, or they may be somebody that would utilize the services of that group, or they would influence others to say, hey, I heard about this group. Isn't this wonderful that individuals are rallying around whatever the particular area is? And I think we're often goal oriented. We're in a hurry, and there is you need some time for reflection to make sure that you're going the right way, and that there are people that are following you, because oftentimes as leaders, you look around, there's nobody behind you. That's a pretty lonely experience. And so what's wrong, and what have you not been able to do to get the support of your organization or others around you to accomplish whatever the task is?
I love that. I think of another program of the chamber, Leadership Box Cities, and it takes 40 individuals through a journey for 8 months, and then in that 40 individuals, there's 7 or 8 individuals get partnered together to do a small group project, and it literally will take 7 people of different backgrounds and thoughts and goals and try to pick out one ultimate goal to accomplish between 8 months and complete a small group project. And seeing what results can happen in that is so fascinating when people come together for a common goal, putting their own interests aside to help. And it really has such an impact on the Fox Cities and a lot of those programs you see today. A lot of things that we've talked on in other forums has been, and Tim touched on mentorship earlier, was like, who do you have? You don't have to share names, but the impact mentorship has had, do you mentor? And then who is some of your people that's your sounding board? Do you still have mentors? What impact do they have in your role today? So Tim, I'll go to you first, but kind of that lines of mentorship, do you still have somebody to be a sounding board? What impact do they have? And are you doing some mentorship now to give back as you continue to progress in your career?
Great. So yes and no. What I would tell you is early on in my career, I was assigned people. I truly believe I won the lottery with parents. I've got a mom who was an OR nurse and caring, and I can listen to her and she can mentor me on family and so much stuff, and even business. And a father that, has been so driven and led us places that, who would have thought years ago. But then at the same time, different people that, from Tom Prosser to Tom's father, I used to once every other month get together with OC, Mr. Boldt, where he would just share nuggets, and I think of amazing times, and then you reflect to today. I'm texting Kim or writing Kim a message right now because she said a couple things that really resonated with me that I want to thank her for, that I needed the reminder. And Tom said a few things on the giving front that really made me pause, because I'm working on 2 fundraisers right now, and I was on one piece of it, and now he expanded my knowledge again, and so I think you can learn from anyone and everyone you're working with. I almost find it humorous when people get so fascinated by Undercover Boss, that one show on TV, because I just think that's life. Like, who would have to think that you have to go take a film crew in a disguise and go listen to your team to really know what's going on, if you can be transparent empathetic and open, your teammates can mentor you. We have a janitor that's been with us since day one. He's not 100% with us or with it. And I learned from him. He's taught me one day he's like, sneaky, I see you sneaking out the back door. And I reflected about it, and I should be proud. It's my day off. I'm there on my day off. What am I doing? Like Kim said earlier, on my day off, why am I there? Why am I sneaking in the back? Because I don't want somebody to see me in my non-work clothes. And why am I sneaking out the back? No, I should be up front and center and proud of who I am. And his little sneaky comment, I reflect on all the time, because everybody's watching. And sometimes, even, your kids, or even the most basic thought people, can really make an impact on you. My kids absolutely hate going out to public dinner with me because of how all the people I say hi to. And my wife used to say it, and I would kind of say, hey, this is part of my business, accept it. And now that my kids are saying it, it's kind of like that intervention. I needed a different mentor to help me. And it reminds me of Kim talking about her husband saying, put down the cell phone. I can sit in that chair and listen to my family and pay attention, and not walk away and leave my family and tell them I don't care about them. And I've had to have interventions where I was the one that would text 11 o'clock at night to our team, or 5 a.m. in our team. And everybody's like, when do you sleep? And I thought that was an honor and a badge of courage. And one of our directors came in and sat down in my office and said, if you keep this up, I have to leave. And I'm like, you're one of my best players. What are we doing? And she explained it to me, and it was so logical, but that was mentorship. So I would say mentorship is purely listening to those that are around you, and reflecting on it. You don't have to have the answers. They don't have to be brilliant to make an impact on you. They just have to listen. And Kim, your text is coming in the chat directly to you.
I'll just share maybe a little more, Scott, and I was fortunate to have my dad with us for 96 years, and so I had a really great sounding board for lots of stuff. But as Tim said, whether you like it or not, you do leave an impression on people. And my dad told me once that as he was young and his experiences, he would have these interactions, and he would have people that he said, boy, that person is a great listener. This person does a great job in public speaking. This person does, and he would say, those are traits that I would like to have. And then he would try to model those types of things, in his own way. And I think part of this stuff is you have to be genuine as well. I mean, you can't, we're all different. We all have our strengths, but I think that there are areas that we all would acknowledge that we're not particularly strong on. And I admire people that say, okay, I'm not good at this particular thing, but I can be better at it and work on that. And if there's areas that people feel, I'm not good in this or not good in that, I think there are plenty of opportunities that people have to experience and learn from that. I do worry at times, again, with our media and people that are maybe very egocentric, that how are they getting different experiences? And I think this is one of the real benefits of the whole diversity and inclusion area, is that we're trying to open people's minds up to different things. I lived and worked in Europe for a number of years. I had an opportunity to work in the Middle East. Very, very, very different than the United States. And so if you have a broader perspective, I think that that can be helpful. But again, we live in this community, and I think that if we can expand our opportunities and relationships, that's always a good thing.
I hear a lot about impressions, making impressions, building that relationship, and it brings me back to a story. It wasn't impacted on me directly, but a good friend of mine worked for the Bergstrom Corporation. And Mr. Dick Bergstrom invited him down on a Saturday morning to talk about a job opportunity. And he said, it's a Saturday. Can meet me at 10 a.m. outside Nina 1. You don't need to dress up too special or whatever. It's a Saturday. So my friend wore a button-down shirt, khaki shorts and boat shoes. And Mr. Bergstrom met him at the outside door with a suit and tie on, much like Tim has on. And he said, I'm sorry, did I misunderstand? You said this is kind of more of a casual and formal. He goes, oh, no, it is. He goes, I only have one opportunity to make a first impression on you. And it was something that, he shared that with me afterwards, after the interview and everything. He had the job and he worked there for a few years. That just continues to resonate with me about, when you meet people and we're going into job opportunities, or you never know who you might work for down the line. So maybe I never thought about working in insurance, and who would have thought that somewhere down the line now I'm working in the insurance world coming from a sports background. And so you don't know how you're going to impact people and the impression you're going to make on them. And so I think hearing a lot of you guys talk about that as the impressions, those relationships, because everybody's watching, everybody's seeing what you're posting. And so it's a great opportunity just to continue to remind ourselves today, as quick as we move, being present in the moment, listening, being authentic are all key things and traits, I think, as I saw in the comments, that really go a long way in furthering our careers. We have about 12 minutes. We sign off at 10 a.m. But we have on here a nice comment about the local, national, the global. Oh, go ahead, Tim. Sorry, Tim, go ahead.
Can I just throw a quick one at Selena Hernandez's question of when did you know you wanted to pursue this line of work, and did something or someone spark the passion? I have an interesting comment on that I'm not smart enough to have come up with on my own, but have been from others. And you were just, it leans into what you were saying. I don't love cars, and I enjoy people. And so many of the people that have found themselves in our business or in other businesses, it's not the age old, as I'm talking to my daughter on what does she want to be when she grows up, what college does she want to study, it goes back to Tom's thing. We all have different strengths. Lean into your strengths, lean into what excites you, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that profession. In Kim's world, she's got all sorts of different jobs that are available, but find a company, find roles that have integrity and businesses that my father has never asked me to do something that would break Warren Buffett's rule of if it was on the front of the newspaper, how would you feel about it? He's never asked me to do anything I wouldn't be proud of. And so I'm willing to do whatever job it takes, and I have fun doing it. I probably have more fun when it's time to, when a dealership is broken and it's time to clean up the dealership and show the team we can roll up our sleeves together. It isn't like I said, wow, one day I want to run this company. It's just the stuff I'm doing, be in love with what you're doing and do it well. And if you can't get excited about what you're doing, then look elsewhere. But it doesn't have to be, my son likes sports, therefore he's got to be a sports broadcaster. I really believe as you pursue your job, different opportunities open up, and no matter how good you are at it, Brett Favre was really good at throwing the football, and now he's good on the radio for talking. Aaron Rodgers is really good at throwing the football, and who knows, he'll be Jeopardy or something, or maybe he'll want to. I think he could be a really good coach. It doesn't necessarily. That's just me. Now it's different if you're trying to be an athlete. I'll give you that. But so often you see a baseball player that becomes a really good football player or something. I would use that analogy more. That'd be my answer.
Okay, Berton, do you have anything else you want to add before I'll kind of go with our final remarks?
No, I think, we hit all the questions in the chat? I was just looking to see.
I think some of them indirectly, we may have touched on them. Tim talking about Selena's question there, skills and experiences. I think you guys all really have hit on that. The one thing I was going to ask about a couple of questions about the climate and the local, national, global politics and media. I know it's kind of a longer comment, but we have about probably 8 minutes to give us some time to sign off. So if you want to, Kim, being a multinational corporation, would you want to touch a little bit about, with today's environment, in being a multinational corporation,
Mhm.
what role, how does it affect the decisions you guys have to make at the top level from a branding perspective, marketing perspective?
Yeah, it's gosh, it's so fascinating, and we could have a whole session on that. When I was thinking about when I was in a couple of my last global roles, you think about currency fluctuations, huge impact on the business results. You think about what we did with COVID here, it shut down the global supply chain. Even right now today, we have 100 plus boats, ships, containers sitting on the West Coast trying to get product in. So it really becomes, the global supply chain is so integrated today. And I'm sure both Tom and Tim see this in various ways too, but we get to the point where we actually we can't make our own product because we can't get the raw materials into the United States. And so the whole global political economic thing really has an impact on the business and opens up not only challenges, but I would say also opportunities at the same time. It causes you to challenge and think about, well, should we have multiple suppliers that can support our products versus a few, which has traditionally been the way that big companies like Kimberly-Clark would go to single sourcing because you could negotiate great pricing. So there's a lot of things that have been challenged as a result of particularly the last year. And so it's a fascinating time to run any kind of business because we are no longer just the United States boundaries anymore. And somehow, some way, I'm sure that everybody's business is touched by the global economic and political environment.
Very good. To keep a final conversation, if you guys were not in the roles you're in today, where else would you see yourself being, or what was the other dream job as you're growing up? So Tom, you start first. Where would you be if you weren't in this role today? What else was your passion before joining the company?
I thought that I would be in education. I had an opportunity to test that out, and I decided that wasn't what I wanted to do. But I've always been attracted to Europe, just from family trips and experience. So I think it would be really fun to work and live in France, and I continue to try to dabble in my French language if possible. I just think it's a kick to speak in a foreign language. And
Say something for us.
En français ou en autre langue de la part de moi.
Now, what did you say?
I said, I'm not quite sure. I said, if you wanted me to do it in French or in another language. So.
Nice.
It's a wonderful place to live. It's a crazy place to work. Personal experience. So it's very interesting.
Right. And I think that you think of, again, I've got friends I talk to in France on a regular basis, and they are kind to me, and they listen and correct me from time to time. So it's fun. But I think, you think about that, but this country is phenomenal, and the opportunities and the experiences that it offers for so many people is great. Sure, we have our issues, but again, the ways in which America has been able to transform itself and continue to be a leader in the world is amazing. So I guess I would probably say that I would be back here again, working for the family business and trying to do good work in the communities in which we live and work in.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Tom. Kim, again, if you weren't working at Kimberly-Clark in the role you're in today, where else was one of your passions that you saw yourself being as a kid looking forward?
Mm-hmm. So I actually have two, and they're really crazy. One is I would be a travel agent, because I love to put pieces together and bring crowds together. So it's the team building side of it. And the second thing is I wanted to be a volleyball coach.
I love it. Do you follow like the collegiate volleyball or?
I do. Yep. I don't play anymore because I'm a little old, but played quite a bit. So yeah, but the coaching side of it, I just loved. So maybe someday, you never know.
That's wonderful. And Tim, if you were with the family business, where would you find yourself?
I'm glad you gave me plenty of time to think about it with those two going first. I truly didn't really have that forward thought so much. Maybe I just lived so much in the present. And so as I reflected, the farthest back I could go was maybe in high school. Michael Jordan was the thing. So I can remember jumping on my bed with a basketball hoop in the bedroom trying to emulate him, but I never had the talent to do that. So I ended up in a spot where I really like it. And I often think about Steve Jones's comment from Kimberly, where comparison is the thief of joy. So I'm not trying to say, I wish I had this, or I wish I could have done that. I kind of set my sights on what I'm doing. I do well, and then look for opportunities and goals to make it special for my kids or my family to do something. And so a little bit of Tom and Kim, I really think seeing the world's a wonderful thing, but I love living here. So I've never thought to go live elsewhere. I've always thought go visit and then come back home where I'm safe and where I know people and look forward to getting up every morning.
Thank you guys so much. And the big thing I'm hearing from all of you today is, we're all people, and listening and doing right and being authentic is so important. And I appreciate you guys just sharing a little bit about, if you weren't in the role you're today, where else would you be? And so I think as we're all navigating through the waters of our careers and professions, is may not end up where we expected to be, but if you find that industry or the role that you're passionate about, and Tim being about people, and it's a great thing, and you find a lot of happiness. And a big thing of work-life balance is always going to be an obstacle. And so I appreciate you guys sharing your insight and some of your knowledge. If you want to take a second, post in the chat if you guys feel comfortable sending your email or something else. I'm sure you could put that out there if you feel like you'd respond to emails. Put that in the chat. If you don't feel comfortable, I'm not going to force you to. But thank you for the questions today from the people who attended and all their insight. This concludes our program for the day. I thank you guys all for joining us. Look for the link for this recording.
God, thank you. You did a great job. So since
Thank
you
you.
can't hear from the participants, thank you from us. You made it flow well. I felt comfortable and just talked. So thank you very much. And
Thank you very much.
I put my email out there. Anybody want to reach out? I'm good with it. No problem. I
well.
actually put my cell if you want to text me. I get so many of those bonus calls now that none of us are looking for that I don't answer numbers I don't know. So text first. I think most of us are in that world right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you guys so much. For the for the people in the audience, you'll see the link coming with the recorded version. So if there's something you want to go back and play back, you certainly can. Look for future events. If you haven't already signed up for Pulse, join the Pulse Young Professionals Organization. We need more great people to be serving on committees, to get involved, to host these things. So it's a great opportunity to grow your network, meet people, learn about the community. So the Chamber of Commerce here, thank you guys for being sponsors of these programs, and hope you guys all have a great rest of your day, a great week, and hope for warmer weather ahead.
Very good. Take care, everybody. Bye now.
Bye-bye.